Shalom and welcome to this week's Living Torah. And still got a voice. I've been with Anoke Young for about a week, so been a lot of interesting time and conversation there. I want to, before we get into this, give everyone a special invitation. I know that I should have probably said this a couple weeks ago, but this weekend at no, actually, it's not this weekend. It's the following weekend, so we're good. February 5th at Life Assembly here in Franklin. Many of you know that Kathy and I began a congregation a few months ago, and so we're doing on the Torah portion of Teruma, of the contributions and beginning of the revelation of the tabernacle. We're going to do the tabernacle experience here in Franklin, and so if you'd like information on that, be glad to send that out to you if you're anywhere close to the area. Of course, anytime. Anyone is welcome to come and be a part of our service. It's going very well. Got a great group of people. A pretty good group to hang out with, or at least I think so. We've gone through Torah portions of the plagues, splitting of the Reed Sea, Moshe with the burning bush experience, and all of these things. And now we get to this Torah portion of Mishpatim, or rulings. And, as I open it at first, it's like, okay, how do you make rulings real exciting, right? It kind of took me back to pastoral days, in which there's this trap, and I know that you guys are not a part of this, and if you go to it, you have a congregation of your own. Hopefully you're not expecting things like this, but in religion, okay, no, whether it be in a in a church setting, a synagogue, whatever, you're always kind of expected to hit this home run every week. That every sermon that you come up with on a weekly basis is to be this over the top, people amen and getting involved, and it's just yes, and you all go out and go to the back door and tell the pastor how great of a job they did and all these things. Well, let's kind of look at this. That's not the reality of life, is it? The reality of life is not living in total ecstasy all the time, unless you're on drugs, okay? If you're living in total ecstasy all the time, we call you an addict. If you're always having to have a dopamine fix, or you're addicted to video games, or this or that or the other thing, at some point in time, somebody's going to sit down and say to you, you need to get some help. You need to understand that life is not always about that. That life is about walking out the very basics of life on a daily basis. And sometimes in the midst of all that is going to be those moments, those, incredible moments of life, but we don't live there. And so this Torah portion is bringing us back down a little bit, I think, to the time that we had of the Reed Sea that's splitting, and the plagues are happening, and here's the locusts and the frogs and all this kind of stuff. That's not normal, folks. That's not normal. And in this 24/7 news cycle and internet and Facebook and social media and all of these things, if you're feeding on that all the time, it can become a frenzy. We got to back off and see that life is not about just all that stuff, but life is about walking it out on a daily basis. The things that we just do between the event and the event. I hope that makes some kind of sense. And to begin this, it says these are the rulings that you are to present to them. It is the word of mishpatim or mishpat is the governmental orders that are being handed down from the spiritual realm itself in order for us to walk out the spiritual realm in the natural realm. That once again, those realms are to be brought together because of our lives. Now, as we begin this, it starts talking about if you purchase a Hebrew slave, and I think this is where a lot of people get really mixed up. And the understanding, because the word slave, the word slave especially in American culture, is so racially charged right now. And let's face it, there is a concerted effort by many people, politicians and the like, to put a further charge on words like this. But if we consider it, as this person is a worker, okay, you have someone that is a business owner, and this business owner puts an ad in the paper, or on the local headhunter, whatever the websites were that day. Now I don't believe there was a website, but that they hire an employee. So this is the beginning of how do we treat people. And let's face it, the Torah is written to us to show us that the Almighty has those moments in life that He He shows Himself. He shows the miraculous. The parting of the Red Sea is something that we're going to remember for a while. But was that parting of the Red Sea going to then affect them in their daily life and relationships? The height of, and this is why when Yeshua was asked, what is the greatest commandment? He said, you are to love Adonai your Elohim with all your heart, soul, and strength, and to love your neighbor as yourself. He didn't point them to a lot of other things and the showmanship that the Father had revealed to the Pharaoh. He didn't point them. He said the basis of what I'm teaching you, what the Torah is revealing, is the relationship level that is to be between you and the Father, you and the Creator, and each other. This is why I call the greatest level of Torah interpretation, the greatest level of Torah revelation, is that of relationship. It's how do we treat each other. And that in our treating of one another, we are literally bringing His realm into our realm, or we are given the opportunity to do so, okay? We can also miss that opportunity. So these are governmental rulings, orders of how we are to live our lives. Let me go to a kind of an interesting, at least in my mind, it's interesting. Hopefully, it will be in yours also. That we have to live. We are called to live today this life that is sometimes over toward the spiritual realm, that's called Shabbat, and other times over toward the natural realm, that's called the 6 days of the week. And we're called to actually bring those realms together. But the whole idea of being Torah observant, Torah pursuant, of guarding the commandments, there's this realm that happens in the natural. Let's take dietary laws, okay? There is a spiritual dynamic behind the kosher dietary laws of that which is clean and that which is not clean. But it's lived out in our realm. And so the two are being brought together. So let's take that to other areas of our lives. Let's say that you're going to Shabbat. You're going to Shabbat service, but you got up a little bit late. You're in a little bit of a hurry, and something happens, which normally does. Things happen in life. And so you're running a little bit late, and so you end up getting caught speeding. Well, the officer pulls you over, and you try to say, I'm sorry I was speeding, but I'm heading to a Shabbat service. Well, what is that? Well, that's where we study about the commandments of God. And he says, but why did you break this? Well, that doesn't mean anything. It doesn't. Are we pushing one set of commandments? Well, that's just the natural realm. That's just speeding signs, but that doesn't mean anything. I'll tell you this, folks. If we are constantly pushing the laws and regulations that are laid down around us, our tendency is for that to bleed over into the spiritual realm of our lives. One of my favorite Jewish authors wrote a book, a number of books on faith, Arush Shalom. And he wrote some books on marriage, various things. And he said, there's a chapter, some chapters in there regarding marriage, and how many people. There was I can't remember exactly. It's been a long time since I've read his books. Whether it was him or someone, a counselor that he was was using his books. But he said, when a couple comes in, this would be a Jewish couple, of course. A couple comes in for marriage counseling. They're on the verge of some marital problems. He says, one of the first things I ask them is, are you eating kosher? Now, I would imagine that for the vast majority, they'd be like, okay, wait a minute, we're having marital problems. We're on the edge of splitting up. And you're asking me, the first question you're asking me is, do we eat kosher? What in the world does that have to do with our marriage problems? And the truth is everything. That if we're not walking according to the laws in this natural realm, it's going to affect us in other areas. So maybe we ought to start looking at those speed limit signs. Maybe we ought to start looking at the things that are around us and say, if I'm always pushing the boundaries of those, is it causing me to push boundaries other places? Okay, let me move on from there before I get totally confused. If you purchase a Hebrew slave, he is to work for 6 years, but in the 7th he is to be given his freedom without having to pay anything. Of course, this is for most of us that would be, have studied the Torah at all, when we look at if he's working for 6 years and then there's the 7th year, this should make us think about the Shemitah, the year of release. That he's, and we can go back, of course, to the life of Jacob and see that this same principle was there. So there is a Shemitah, which is a year of release, and we think about that, of course, of the debts being given and everything. But for this Hebrew worker, he's given his rite of passage to leave the house. All that you have done, the work that you've given, okay, you're free to go. You're free to go. And so he says something in the midst of it is, I don't want to go. I don't want to go. I want to stay here because up until this point in time, I've been in the house, but I've been here as a servant, as a forced laborer. I was I was forced to be here. Someone sold me into this. someone made me come here. But as I've been here, it's become apparent to me that this is where I belong. And I don't want to go anywhere else. Interesting enough, to my mind, is that we are in that Shemitah year. Right now we're in the Shemitah. And so the end of Sukkot is the end of the Shemitah year. It's the year of the supernatural, the year of the forgiving of debts, of various things. Is it possible that we are in a time period in which the Father's looking at those? Follow me here if you can. This is something that I just have been kind of thinking through here. Because in our day, and this is just an observation, okay? I'm not pointing a finger at anybody here. This is just an observation. But there are so many people that are leaving this walk, heading back to church. I was at a congregation the other day. I won't give you any details because it's irrelevant. But I was there talking to a couple of friends, and we were the conversation got around to a few things, and they said, "Have you talked to so and so lately?" I said, "No, it's been quite some time." They said, they're totally back to Christmas. They're celebrating all of the things that are of Christianity. And I stood there with my mouth open. One side of me was like, well, I'm not quite surprised, because I've kind of the interaction that I've had with this person for quite some time ago. I could kind of see that happening, but at the same time, it was just dumbfounding to me, because this is a family who I would have said to you 5 years ago, there's no way this family would not be moving forward in this. They were teaching Torah, leading a congregation. And now, this past year, they're celebrating Christmas with a tree in their house. Again, I'm not being judgmental toward anyone, but folks, it would be one thing if this was an isolated case, but it's not. There is a great multitude of people that have been a part of this Hebrew roots Messianic walk for many years. I was talking to Hanok about this, and to some other friends that I've known for 20 years in this, and we were discussing how many people we know. It's like, where are they? They're gone. They're nowhere to be found. They've completely departed from the revelation of walking in the Torah. And if we consider the words of Yeshua, if you love me, keep my commandments, which translates in my book, if you love me, or since you love me, guard, take part in, observe, be a part of my commandments, my mitzvot, do the things that I've told you to do in my Torah. If that verse is true, and I believe it is, that is this part of these verses right here of people that we've seen in the house? They've been we thought they were a part of the house. They were here just like the rest of us. But there came a time in which the master of the house said, "You're not here for the right reason. You're not here because you want to be here. You're here because you got caught up in a fad, or what you thought was a fad. You got caught up in a movement, or you had some peer pressure from a group that you were hanging out with, and it was never a part of you. You were standing in the house, but the house was never a part of you. And the master is saying, I'm giving you an opportunity to leave, to walk away. Will that opportunity be given to all of us? Are we hearing the voice right now in the crazy world that we're living in? Is the Father saying to those that are in the house, do you want to stay? Or do you want to go? You're free to go. No strings attached. It's been fun. Thank you for the work that you've put in. But you're free to go if you desire. And so this is about a people who say, I don't want to go anywhere. I've never found life in anyone else's house. I've never found a love in any other house. I've never found relationship like I have in this house. I've never found order that I've so desired through my life in any other house. So this is about a change of status, to where we go from being in the house because of have to being in the house because we want to. It's a change of status. Going from being a slave, a worker, a hired servant, let's put it that way, to being a bondservant. And by the way, Rav Shaul, if you go through his writings, will introduce himself on numerous in numerous occasions. This is the title that he had. I think that when you were around Shaul, he was probably going to take you back to these verses at some point, because these verses meant something to him. He knew what it was like to be in the house, but to be there because of duty and even a bondage. But when Rav Shaul was given the opportunity on the road to Damascus, he was given the opportunity. You can be free. You can be free of the house. He saw the eyes of the one who was being revealed to him. He said, I never understood what the house was all about. And he accepted that change of status from being a slave, a hired worker, to being a bondservant, the one who desired to be there. And to those who make that decision, I'm going to go back to this a little bit, just a little bit more. Consider this. How did you come into this walk? Was it a spouse that, woke up one day and said, hey, by the way, I was thinking, who changed Saturday to Sunday? Or I was reading the scriptures or something, and I think we need to do this, and you said, well, I guess so. Or was it your parents, or that that said, okay, we're going to be doing this. You're not going to have corn dogs unless they're beef corn dogs in the house anymore, and you're not going to be eating these things, and we're not going to be doing this, and but you're going to have to make your own decision. What if someone came to you and said, I know that you've lived your life for God, but you're free. You're free to do whatever you want in life. I was talking to Hanok this past week, and mentioned a couple of friends of ours, mutual friends. Some of you would know them or know of them. Moshe and Leah Goldsmith. Moshe is the former mayor of Itamar. They've done so much work with Friends of Itamar, and we've helped them out in many, many ways. They're two of the dearest friends that I have. Incredible people. They were in the States a number of years ago. This is, BC, before COVID. They were in the States, and I was sitting down at a table, and some other folks were there, and they were discussing, and there was some Q&A, and I'm kind of sitting back because I'm letting some other people ask some questions of this. They're Orthodox, observant Jews living in Israel, and they were talking about their questions were about their observance and how it's difficult for them to be in the States, and all the things that they have to go through. And they were explaining how difficult it is just to eat. Okay, I mean, it's very difficult. You and I embrace a level of observance of the kosher dietary laws, but there's another level that is, when you go the level that they've embraced, it's hard, okay? Which means they're pretty much eating salads all the time. And you're trying to make sure that there's no bacon bits anywhere. And Leah made one of the most interesting statements that I've ever heard, and has caused me to think through some things through my life. She says, as a Jew, I never get to take a day off. Think about that. And I know that sounds obvious, okay? Sounds totally, totally obvious to us, but think about it. And let's take it around to our own lives. She said, as a Jew, I never get to take a day off. Because there's the kosher dietary laws, and there's the prayers that they say, and these are not bondage things. And anybody that would judge them for doing this, I'd be the first one to defend them. But let's take it to another level. When you become the bondservant, as a slave, maybe you get a day off. Maybe, as the hard worker, the master of the house says, you've been doing a great job. Why don't you go out and do your own thing for a little while? Take a personal day off. Whatever those personal days are. I don't have I've been self-employed for so many years that I don't understand the lingo of personal days and personal time and all that kind of stuff. I've just got to work. But, there's maybe the master of the house said, why don't you take a personal day? And you could go out and do whatever you wanted. You were free, totally free from the rules of the house. Do your own thing, baby, whatever it is. And then you come back into the house and you then submit. But see, the bondservant, if the bondservant had a personal day that they were given from the master of the house, they walked out of the house and continued to walk in the same walk as if they were in the house. As followers of the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, as followers of Yeshua, coming to the realization, I don't get an afternoon off. I don't get a time off. I don't get a day off. I don't get a day in which, I can say, well, today I can just use whatever language I want to use because he's given me a personal day. It's a Mike day. And I can just do whatever I want. I mean, of course, we could take that to a lot of levels, right? But the truth is, when you accept this role of the bondservant, it's a role that we take upon us, and it becomes part of us. You don't take time off from being who you really are. This is why we hear politicians of, well, that wasn't really me. What I said, that wasn't really me. Yes, it was. Yes, it was. Because the truth is, for someone who is, and I'm picking on politicians for a moment, or let's take an actor, okay? What's an actor? An actor is someone who makes a living being who they're not. That's the basic definition of an actor. A person who makes a living by being someone they're not. I would say that's probably true in a politician also. So when they're caught on a hot mic saying something they shouldn't, or they're caught in some kind of an act or whatever that they shouldn't be a part of, and they come to you and say, well, that wasn't really me. Yes, that probably was really you. And the person that you're trying to portray to us that you are is who you're really not. Is that the way that we want to walk out our life? The life of a bondservant is a life that says, this is who I truly am. I'm no longer in the house because I have to. I'm no longer doing the things of the house because I have to. But I'm here in the house because I want to. I don't want to be separated from this house. I don't want to be separated from the master of this house. And I don't want to be separated from the rules of this house. And those rules are going to permeate everything that I do in life, even if I'm outside of that house because I'm being sent somewhere. For that person, it is said that they would take an awl and put their ear on the doorpost and take that awl and make a hole through it, a piercing through it, which takes us back to the Shema. You are to put these commandments upon the doorpost of the house. We are to Shema. The word Shema, talked about this so many times, that the word Shema is to hear intelligently and to hear in such a way that it causes you to take action. Let's take it one step further. That the Shema is about hearing and allowing those words to become a part of you. That the words that you are reading, hearing, listening to are becoming a part of the essence of who you are. There's things that I don't do in this life because it's not a part of me. It's not who I am. Many people know I play golf some, and it's kind of my ability to go out and try to make some relationships with other people, and it can be a little interesting. Not everybody on the golf course is. Yeah. Well, you know what I'm talking about. You work with people the same way. I may have said this story. I know I said this to our group the other day, but I just met this guy and we got teamed up on in a men's league, and we're driving around a cart. He's driving, I'm riding, or vice versa, whichever. And we'd been together for a couple hours or so on this golf cart, and he finally looked at me and said, "You don't cuss, do you?" No. He's like, "Why?" Says, "Not a part of me. Not a part of my life." I didn't have to say anything else. I didn't have to make myself into somebody I'm not. But there's things that you and I do, and that's just a part of life, okay? But there's things that you and I do and don't do. Why? Because this has become a part of us. It's the essence of, it's written on our heart, on our inward being. That's what the word is talking about, that the Almighty desires that His Torah, His word, be written on our inner being. They become a part of us. The commandments that the things that we follow are just an outgrowth of who we are. So nobody has to remind me. You don't have to remind me that it's Shabbat. You don't have to remind me, that I'm not supposed to eat pork chops when I go to a restaurant. You don't have to remind me of that, because it's not who I am. And that should be the same with each of us. Now, from this point on, the commandments, I know there's things here that we don't understand, but my problem with the scriptures is not what I don't understand, but what I do understand sometimes. So there are commandments here that it's like, what? I don't quite get that. Why? Because it's written to a different culture. We're not the Hebrews coming out of Egypt. Much of, and this maybe will help in walking through some of these things. Egypt was a very pagan culture. They had multiple gods. Pharaoh being one of them. The River Nile being another one. Frogs. I mean, all these things were about these things that they worshipped. So it's a very pagan culture with very pagan practices. Much of the Torah is written to those people regarding specific pagan practices and how they were not to be a part of it. The difficulty is when we try to take those things and interpret them into our own world, we can get some confusion. It's kind of like reading the books of Corinthians. I just went through and was reading First and Second Corinthians, and there's things that I'm like, I don't get that. You know why? Because Corinthians is the answers to questions that we don't know what the question was. And so it's easy, as has been done, it's easy to come to wrong conclusions because we don't know what the question was. When we go back and find the question, then we can look at the answer and go, okay, now that's what that meant. So be careful when we're reading these things, trying to interpret them into our own lives today. It is possible to come to some wrong conclusions, and there's grace. I think that and I'm speaking for the Father, I shouldn't be doing that, but I think that, I've never in my own life, I've never felt that when I was trying to go do something that was toward it, maybe it was I was doing the wrong thing, but for the right reason, that he works with that. He works with that and adjusts things as moving forward. But it's all to be done from the inside. And so we read through these things, and let me give you a very basic of what a lot of this Torah portion is about. Take responsibility. Yeah. Take responsibility in a world that is not responsible. The whole essence of the legal of our system of injustice today. Nobody's responsible for anything. You can have on videotape someone pulling out a gun, shooting someone else, and here's the camera, and here's multiple cameras, and what will the alleged perpetrator? Really? And I get the terminology here, but then the person, well, I'm not guilty, because nobody's ever guilty anymore, because nobody's taking responsibility. I say nobody. I mean, for the most part out there, people aren't taking responsibility for their actions. The Torah teaches us, take responsibility for your actions. So if you back into somebody, you're think of it this way. There was a famous person recently that shot someone, killed him. The news report was the gun went off. I've been handling firearms for a long time. Never had one go off. I've had one fire when I pulled the trigger. I've never seen a bullet just sitting there on the desk and it just went off. The SUV hit someone. No, it didn't. The person inside put it in drive. We need to be people that take responsibility for our actions. So if your dog, and this is verse 4, if your dog gets out of your yard and goes and digs up your neighbor's garden, don't blame the dog. The dog's just doing what the dog's supposed to do. Dogs dig holes until you teach them not to, okay? So if your dog gets out, digs up somebody else's garden, I'm sorry, it's my fault. What can I do to help? What can I do to fix that? That's what the Torah is teaching us. Verse 5, if a fire starts and spreads and burns your neighbor's house down, well, that candle that I had lit, I don't know why that candle just kept burning and burning, and it just all of a sudden lit the whole kitchen on fire, and it burned your house down. I didn't have anything to do with that. Take responsibility. Take responsibility for what is in your life. Take responsibility for what is in your house. You're not to permit a sorceress to live. This is down in verse 17. Take responsibility. That if there's a Harry Potter book in your library, it didn't just get there. I've had UPS that's in the post office and FedEx and all these others. They deliver stuff to your door. They never walk in and say, somebody ordered this and told me to put it on your bookshelf. No. Things are in your house because you allow them to be in your house. What comes over your threshold? What comes over our threshold is our responsibility. And we should take responsibility for our actions to take it away from our threshold. Okay? Verse 21, take responsibility for the widow and the orphan. I had a friend of mine the other day who was driving down the road. Someone was on the side of the road and had run out of gas. What'd they do? They went to the store, got a gas can, came back, put gas in the car, and then took them to the gas station and filled up their car for them. Ended up on the side of the road. The person wanted to pray for them. The person that bought the gas for wanted to pray for them. Take responsibility for other people when there's something that you see. I can do a whole lot better job at this. But when you see something, don't withhold something good. The scripture tells us, don't withhold something good from someone when you have the ability to do it. And not all the time do we have the ability. You may not have the financial ability to do stuff all the time. You may not have the physical ability or whatever it is, but be open to the Father's leading to do what you can do. And don't condemn yourself for what you can't do. Okay, I'd love to, I'd love to send $1 million to Israel for some project. I'd love to do. I can't, because I don't have that. Okay, so why would I condemn myself for what I can't do? When an offering, you have an offering. Well, I want to give $100, but all I got is this $5. Well, don't condemn yourself for not giving the 100, because you didn't have the ability. Maybe the Father is going to give you the ability. Okay, great. Then walk in that. But don't accept condemnation for what you can't do. Just do what you're supposed to do. And see, if we all do what we're supposed to do, then we're going to get the right thing done. But we're not to, as chapter 23, verse 2 tells us, don't follow the crowd. These are just These are just very simple things. Don't follow the crowd. Not a political statement, but January 6th. Now, I can go into all kinds of things and theories and stuff. Okay, there's people that got thrown in jail because they followed a crowd. Watch who you're following. The crowd has never been right. The crowd, following the crowd, everybody's doing it. Okay, that's fine. That's what sheep do. Sheep follow sheep. And both of them fall in the ditch. That's the scripture that Yeshua said, the blind lead the blind into a ditch. They both fall. So if you fall into a ditch because you followed someone who was going into a ditch, it's not their fault. You're the one that followed the person into the ditch. Don't follow the crowd. We need to be a people who are thinking for ourselves. And I hear folks today say, well, I don't want to know. Really? I don't want to know. Yeah, I want to know. I want to know what's around me so that I can make proper decisions. I want to surround myself with those who are, the scripture would call the multitude of counselors. I need to know who I can trust, who I can allow to speak in my life, who I can follow. That's not going to take me into a ditch. Just a couple things. Let's go over all the way to 29. I will not drive them out from before you in 1 year, which would cause the land to become desolate. Why hadn't the kingdom come? Why are we not in Israel? Why isn't this all wrapped up? Because it's in his timing. And I know it's a cliche, guys. I know it's a cliche. Well, it's all in the Father's time. Yeah, it is, because he knows the timing better than we do. And he's walking, all the things that are happening in the world today are happening in his timing for my good. They're happening in his timing for your good. He's walking us through this in order for the end result to be our perfection. Let me back up on that word. Our completion. For he who began a good work in you is able to complete it. And I don't know about you, but I've found that his completion is done best in his timing, not in mine. We got all kinds of things. Moshe, the elders went up, they saw Elohim. They had a vision of the kingdom, eating and drinking in his presence. Get a vision. Get a vision for the kingdom. And as we keep walking toward it, let's take responsibility for our actions, taking responsibility for what we do. There's going to be those that go back. There's going to be those that are given the invitation. You can leave if you want, but it's for me and my house. Let's settle. Let's settle in whose house we intend to stay in all the way to the end. Shabbat Shalom. Shavua Tov. Have a blessed, prosperous week. Be'ezrat Hashem. Yah willing. See you again next week. And until then, be strong.
Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmarecha. Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'yichunecha. Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha Shalom.